I hate foreigners. I am xenophobic. I hate, again, I hate times and times. I don't know how many times. I hate foreigners. I am xenophobic. I don't like foreigner.
When your spokespeople are like this, where are the intellectuals that are promoting this idea? There are none. The argument is a low resolution one. It only covers surface level. And as you start to dig a bit deeper, you see problems. Africa just gave neocolonialism a brand new opportunity. That's the topic we're discussing today. And we're focusing in on the conversation between the rest of Africa and South Africa when it pertains to the xenophobic, Afrophobic, or anti-immigration movement that we're seeing happening in South Africa right now. Now, we are at a new level because we've gone from social media and people reacting online to presidents actually making statements about this situation. And the latest of these statements happened just 24 hours or so ago by John Mahama, the president of Ghana. So we're going to start there, and then I'm going to break down why Africa just gave neocolonialism a brand new opportunity. Let's go.
But one more thing that we wanted to raise, we forwarded a petition to the AU Commission on the xenophobic attacks on other foreign nationals.
So we've gone from social media people and outrage online, YouTube, TikTok outrage, to presidents talking about it. And now this president even wants to raise it to the level of the African Union.
In South Africa, for the countries that have been victims, it's been a very traumatic affair for us.
So notice he used the word xenophobia out the gate. He didn't say anything about anti-immigration, just said xenophobia. And then he said victims, which is showing you how this is being framed. Now, the people that say it's just anti-migrant stuff and we just want foreigners out, now you've moved to a new level because when you're talking about how you want to be perceived, you cannot always control this. And a perfect example of this is, for example, me, I'm a mixed ethnicity person, right? My dad is Nigerian, my mother is English, and I live in Uganda. And it doesn't matter how much I know what my ethnicity is. Everybody generally in the streets on Uganda, when I go to shops, when I go to the marketplace, when I go to malls, they see me as white. They call me white. They call, and I'm not just talking about the word Muzungu, which is what is used to mean foreigner. No. They don't even believe in many cases that I have any black blood in me. They just think I'm white. So I can't go around with a sign over my head saying, hey, by the way, I'm mixed. Hey, by the way, my dad's Nigerian. And even when I've told some people, not everybody, but even when I've told some people, hey, my dad is black, they just are like, they don't believe you. So however much the people like Jacinta, Zuma, and the March on March people, the Dudula people, say they're not being xenophobic, say they're only targeting the government, say that they're only just after the immigration laws. You cannot control the way that people perceive your movement right now. And a president, whether you like it or not, is saying it's xenophobic and they are receiving this situation as victims. That is very important for you to understand.
Considering the solidarity we share, our project to achieve African integration, I mean, when something like this happens, it sets all of us back. People have been displaced.
What does he mean by sets all of us back? He is actively working for a pan-African outcome for the continent of Africa. And he's put his money where his mouth is, opening the borders for many African countries and an increasing number of African countries to have free, visa-free access to Ghana because he wants to promote trade. And we've seen this with Botswana. We've seen this with Burkina Faso. We've seen this with, I can't remember the other countries that have announced this over the last few months and weeks. But we're talking about undermining the idea of Pan-Africanism, which, if you know anything about Kwame Nkrumah, is a big push for someone like Mahama here, who is a big fan of the idea of Africa lifting itself up, as am I, through Pan-Africanism. So you are undermining everything he's worked for.
Their property has been taken, their businesses have been closed, and indeed we lost two of our citizens who were killed. Several people were injured.
When you start talking about deaths, our citizens were killed. This is where countries really start paying attention, and they want accountability. Make no mistake about that. Now, it's very hard for you to defend the movement if the deaths of foreigners in South Africa is occurring. To date, I think we're somewhere between 16 and 20 just in the last 2 weeks of foreigners being killed. That's aside from legal migrants who have lost their businesses, been looted, been turfed out, their businesses taken over, been vandalized, been intimidated, and leaving the country. I'm talking about legal migrants alongside the illegal ones. So when you start talking about a process of removing migrants that just doesn't seem to discriminate between legal and illegal and causes death and causes financial damage and ruin to people, countries pay attention regardless if March on March's message is anti-violence. The outcomes matter here, and you've reached a new level when it comes to governmental pressure.
And had to be admitted in hospital. And it doesn't appear that the South African authorities are responding to the magnitude that one would expect them to do. The persons who are funding these xenophobic attacks are known.
Accountability. They want accountability.
And they've been left free to continue to do what they want to do. And so it's become something they're doing with impunity.
This is not only an attack on the March on March movement, the Dudula movement, but it's an attack on the South African governance itself. It's calling out the weakness in the government, which is actually an interesting quirk that we're going to get into, because I think there's some middle ground here for all of us to understand.
At very high cost to us, we had to charter planes to go to South Africa to evacuate our citizens. We operated 3 charter flights, and we're operating another 3 charter flights because there's still about another 900 who have signed on voluntarily to come back home. And they come back with nothing. Most of them just the clothes on their back and a small bag. And some of them have lived there for 15, 20 years. They have set up businesses, and we've had to pay them reintegration fees, allowances to allow them to be able to reintegrate into society.
Translation: you cost our government money, you kill our citizens in the process. Yeah, we're going to be looking for some financial reparations for that.
So I do think that, as the continental body, AU should take an interest in this issue, because it has the potential to wreck everything that we have worked for: African solidarity, African integration, and all that. And
Pan-Africanism.
so we sent a notice that we wanted to put it on the agenda for the AU meeting that was supposed to take place in Egypt. Unfortunately, that meeting was postponed. Yeah, but we're hoping that at the next opportunity, we will be able to put it on the agenda. President Ramaphosa sent a delegation to me yesterday. We met with them, and I explained the reason why it was important for us to discuss it. Sometimes these things happen. We want to sweep them under the carpet. But when we do that, we rather do not cure what the problem is. And so I told them, I said, Ghana, we don't harbor any malice against South Africa, but we're raising it as an issue for discussion to even give South Africa the opportunity to take that platform of the continental body and explain what they're doing to the world about
accountability. He's asking for accountability. And there's something he's about to say here that means accountability from more than one group. Let's hear it.
About the xenophobic attack. So I would want to advert your mind to it. We didn't get a reply or acknowledgement of our petition, so I just want to remind you.
So just for context, he's sitting next to the president of the African Union right now, and he said we didn't get a reply when we tabled this. So he's publicly applying pressure to South Africa. He's also publicly applying pressure to the African Union. Hey, there's a problem here. Our citizens are dying, and your body, this governing body of African Union, is supposed to have some type of say and power to leverage us so that we can come to a solution. So if you cannot acknowledge this publicly, or I'm putting you in a position that you must acknowledge this publicly. And so it's a very high leverage moment here for John Mahama. He's hitting on multiple sides: African Union level, South Africa, governmental level, and it's also a message to the likes of Jacinta Zuma and the March on March and the Dudula movements. So I think this is an interesting starting place for this report. By the way, this is an extensive and detailed breakdown. I'm going to be covering things that I haven't said before, and I'm also going to bring you to a conclusion that I don't think anyone is really expecting, because this is much bigger than South Africa. This is much bigger than the continent of Africa alone. This is a global situation. This is something that will affect the future of the continent of Africa. And we need to get these situations right if we want to grow and prosper as a continent. By the way, if you want to see this full report, it's on my Substack. I cite all of my sources because I want to try and be factual. I cite all of my sources at the bottom of my articles. You can sign up to my Substack for free. There's a link in the description, just like you see this little arrow underneath my head. And it really does support the channel. There is a paid tier if you want to financially contribute, but even if you don't, I want to be able to connect with you because I never know when I'm going to be kicked off this platform for saying something that goes against the powers that be. Other people in this space, that's happened to. So if you want to support the channel, please head over to my Substack and subscribe. You can also gain access to reports just like this over there. So back to the African Union president. This is him here, and this was his response when he when Mahama broached the subject to him.
The issue of the xenophobic attacks on Africans, not only Ghanaians, African citizens from many countries in South Africa, is something that is really a big source of concern for the Commission. I was in South Africa a month ago. I met President Ramaphosa, and I met Minister Lamola. The official statement is that we condemn that. We do not support that. And they made it even with me in a press conference with the foreign minister. He said if there are illegal migrants in South Africa, they have to be handled through the proper channels of the law of the country. This is the statements. But at the same time, we see that these people who are harassing, our African fellow citizens are free to do whatever they want. That's terrible. That's something that, sometimes makes us very sad. And sometimes you see people in uniforms just watching what's happening just next to them, and they see it. And yesterday I was watching the news. A Mozambican lady was destroying her own, shop, so that she do not, leave it to these people who are coming to, take it over. She was destroying herself, her shop. She has been working there for 20 years. So the human cost of this situation is terrible.
You see, what Mahama has said here, it's like a threat, and but he's done it in a generous way. South Africa is offered a platform to explain itself, not attacked. So he's not saying, hey, South Africa, we're against you. But in a way, he's still applying a lot of pressure publicly here. Essentially, he's trying to gain the moral high ground and say, look, we're not going to do tit for tat because we are going to destroy our continent if we do tit for tat. You don't want to go down that road. And what we've identified here, particularly with this African Union president, is that there's a gap between what the government is saying publicly and what the outcomes are on the streets. When people are still in fear, when people are still dying, when legal migrants as well as illegal migrants are being victims of mob violence, then, hey, we have to do something about it. And this is massive pressure. Pressure not only from the people marching on Ramaphosa and the government, but now from exterior factors. And I thought of this like a pebble. A small township grievance becomes a wave that crosses the whole continent. And that wave has the potential to have catastrophic consequences for the continent. So while there's no use, in my opinion, in fixing the problem at the individual and the township level if it's going to destroy the rest of Africa. And that is why I'm fundamentally against this type of behavior. I'm not saying that there are no problems. I've done a whole video breaking down all of the grievances and acknowledging and understanding the grievances that the South African people have against illegal migration. But the way which they're going about it has a dire consequence. And remember, the title, Africa just gave neocolonialism a brand new opportunity. That's exactly what we do not want to be doing, even as we deal with our own internal grievances in the continent of Africa or our internal grievances in the continent, in the country of South Africa itself. We're rooting for South Africa. At least I am. I love South Africa. I've visited there several times, and I have friends and colleagues that are South African. I don't want to see South Africa be tarnished. But unfortunately, no matter how much people say in the official marches and the organizations that they're not xenophobic, sometimes they profess it with their own mouths.
I hate foreigners. I am xenophobic. I hate, again, I hate times and times. I don't know how many times. I hate foreigners. I am xenophobic. I don't like foreigner because foreigners, I don't have a child because of foreigner.
Now, that lady is called Connie Sebeko, and she is part of the Operation Dudula. So she's not March on March. But this is what Mahama is talking about in terms of like impunity, the beginnings of it. Imagine that somewhere in Europe, I mean, this is akin to like a white supremacist saying, white power and blacks have got to go or something like that. This is kind of on the same level, in my opinion, anyway, because it's maybe not the same, but it's akin to it. And the reason why I say that, you could even in some regard look at it as even worse, because it's self-hatred if you look at it in the context of the continent of Africa. And that is extremely ugly, particularly if the rest of the world is watching. Why? Because whether we like to divide ourselves amongst tribe or whatever, whenever you look at Africans outside of the context of Africa, we are grouped as Africans. So they're just looking at this. They're not seeing this as a South Africa problem from the outside looking in necessarily. They're saying like, look at these Africans. They're poor. They don't know what they're talking about. They're uneducated. And now look, they're even insulting each other. Killing each other, mob violence against each other. Man, South Africa is a lost cause. I can't visit there. I can't invest there. This is what the message that we're showing with this type of behavior. I have to point out something though. At the very end, she said,
Because foreigners, I don't have a child because of foreigner.
I don't have a child because of foreigners. I don't know whether that means somebody killed her child or some type of abusive relationship, or I don't know what that means. And what we have to acknowledge here is that there are real grievances. There's genuine grievances. But the way that it's being addressed, I think, is very unfair. So now the voice coming against South Africa is being spoken by some South Africans. And in this report, we're going to look at two examples of this. But the grievances against foreigners is generally a blanket statement. And here is somebody who's a thinking person, a South African, breaking down, going beyond the emotion and looking at genuine consequences and outcomes if South Africans continue along this path.
These marchers, they went to a company that is trading as a Pace Point Trading, is a wholesale that belongs to a South African business owner called Badat. The wholesale belongs to the Badat family. If I can just take a wild guess, I'll just tell you that the Badat family probably has been in this community for a very long time. And a wild guess, another wild guess can just tell me that this business is a family-run business that has probably been passed on from generation to generation. Another wild guess will tell you that the Badat family employs South Africans. Right. What do, these people? They enter the business premises of the Badat family. They encounter this man. This man is there, he's buying goods, he's stocking. The sheer trolley and the sheer quantity of the goods that he's buying, they will tell you that he's not a pap and flesh business owner. He's a serious business owner. He's buying goods of large amounts. They encounter him, they say, oh, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? I don't know. What do people do at wholesales? He said, no, I'm waiting for my brother. We'll just come here to stock something. You're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be in this country. Blah, 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 blah. Now, there are three things that March and March is running on. They've said that number one, these people are illegal. Number two, they sell expired goods. Number three, they're taking our jobs. This man has got an asla. So number one, cancelled. Number two, he's buying his goods. They are sealed. They're in date. They're being bought from a South African wholesaler. Number 2 is what? Cancelled. Number 3, they are taking our jobs. What's stopping you three, the three of you, to pull money together and go and stock the same place where he's stocking and start your own spaza? What is stopping you? Because the place where they rent these spaza shops, it's your homes, that your garages that you have built, your rooms that you have built, your front rooms that you have built for them to come and rent to stock. So what is stopping you three from pulling money together and go and stock at Badat and open your own spaza? You've got time to move around, roaming about aimlessly to harass people that are stocking and doing proper business. So you are saying that Badat, this Badat, must lose this business because of you people. Is that what you are saying? With Badat must not accept this man's money that is using to stock because of you. Badat is running a business. Badat has got employees to pay. Those employees are your children. They are your nieces and nephews. They are your husbands. They are your mothers. They need to get paid at the end of the month. Where does Badat get the money to pay them if this man doesn't come and stock? Can you stock at the quantity, at the sheer size that this man is stocking? Can you do it? Badat has to pay a mortgage. He's probably bought the property. The FNB maybe has sponsored him, has given him a mortgage to pay. He's got a mortgage to pay. So what must Badat do when somebody comes to buy at his hostel? You must ask the person, show me your ID. Nebona guti, anina this thing. Can you see with all these things that you're doing, it lacks, something is lacking. Something is lacking. Okay, hypothetically speaking, let's say Badat does not accept this man's money. Badat does not accept this order, does not sell this. Then what happens? Badat will have to cut some costs. What is the number one cost of most businesses? It's human resources, it's labor. What will Badat do? Badat will retrench your son. Your son will be sitting at home unemployed. Because what? Because you don't think as a much and much.
Her name is on TikTok, Athim Wentindi. And I don't know if I've said that correctly, but go and follow her. She's got some really interesting perspectives and insights. She's quite funny as well. I cut the clip down a bit. She's kind of got some jokes and stuff. So full attribution to her. She did a great job explaining. And what I think the message you might want to take away from this explanation is that everything in life has trade-offs. Everything in life has trade-offs. So if you make a clear delineation, like we want foreigners out, what are the trade-offs that come with that? I think in the UK, there's something like 500 road deaths from people driving in the country. That is the trade-off that society has accepted in order for us to be able to have cars. Because the alternative, if we want that number of deaths to go to zero, we'd have to stop all cars being in the country. Just stop cars, then there'll be no more car deaths, zero deaths, and then, but what is the trade-off? The country would almost certainly grind to an economic halt. There'll be all kinds of inconveniences. We would be going back to horse and carriage days. There would be infrastructure changes and all of these things. This is the trade-off. We've allowed the deaths of people through the car industry to be allowed as a trade-off for the benefit that it brings. And so the solution, if you only think in straight lines and you don't have any imagination and you can't think 2, 3, 4 moves ahead, or you can't think laterally, just like she's there tapping her head, you're not thinking about the secondary effects, the tertiary effects of the behavior that you're doing. Is the trade-off, when you remove all the foreigners, if you remove all the foreigners, is the trade-off positive outcome for South Africa? You may have lost a child, of which I'm heartbroken for you. I'm very sorry. You may have experienced crime. You may have been robbed. And those grievances are real. Where is the appropriate place to attack that problem? And how is the appropriate place to attack that problem is the issue here. And the course of action that you've taken has now reached the African Union and presidents of other countries. Is that the right path? Do we want to really go up against other governments and create division amongst ourselves? Or you don't care and you're willing to die on that hill and have the effects like this mean that businesses and economic value is destroyed and jobs are lost, you so-called, according to her strategy, it's almost certainly going to lead to more jobs lost. You know, these are trade-offs we have to think about. And in the report where I broke down all of the grievances, everything from job loss to crime to the poisoning of foods in Saba shops, the lack of adherence in spaza shops to food standards, all of those points and grievances, the strain on the governmental services, the prison system, things like that. When you look at it, I think the net value of removing foreigners is more costly than maintaining the current problems you have with the foreigners, especially if you find other solutions to solve some of those issues and hold the government more accountable in those areas. The issue here is economic more than anything. Do you think this woman would be so frustrated, if she was prospering financially? Do you think she'd be on TV and being interviewed, shouting? I think not. But hey, I can only go so far with my opinion. I don't know how much evidence backs what I'm saying, but I can give you a good damn guess. Historically, when has this ever worked? Where you've just expelled a whole group of people. When has that ever worked historically? I don't know of any situation where that truly works. This is coming from a South African, and a South African is actually saying they value foreigners. There's a foreigner buying business and trading in your country. They value foreigners. So it's not just that all foreigners are bad. We can't have that blanket statement. We are looking at these three people as being the loudest mouths, the loudest instigators of this situation. And the attention is now global. Everybody knows who these three guys are in the continent of Africa, even at the presidential level. Remember, John Mahama said,
The persons who are funding the xenophobic attacks are known.
the idea of fanning means that you're not necessarily the one building the fire, but you're the one allowing the fire to continue. So even if they say we're not violent, there are things that you can do in life that are legitimate, that don't break the law. But people frown upon them. People build a negative reputation around you, and people will look hard for a way to bring your downfall, despite you staying within the confines of the law. Let's think of an example of this. Do you remember that there was this Russian guy that was in Kenya and Ghana, and he was wearing meta glasses, or wearing those recordable glasses, and approaching women, taking them back to his hotel, sleeping with them, and recording that interaction and then selling the videos online? He did it all throughout Kenya. Something like 100 women or something like that. I can't remember the number exactly, but multiple women were all victims of this. And it was astonishing to see the way that women, essentially because he was maybe white and was of economic value, they couldn't pass it up. And they just said yes immediately, and they went to sleep with him immediately. And Africa watched that. Before we even get to the illegal part of filming and putting it online, these are two consenting adults deciding to have sex within 10 minutes, within 30 minutes of meeting each other. That optic that Africa watched was extremely ugly and troubling for people, even if he didn't take it to the extent that he took it to, while he stayed within the legal adult consenting framework. It fanned the flames, right? It fanned the flames of what would we not only suspect that this guy is of dubious reputation, which he ended up being, but he's likely to do something illegal, which he ended up doing. And it speaks so badly as to the state by which our economic value is seen in the world. Because essentially, we are seeing a colonizer and slave relationship in a sort. That's the feeling it brings up, although it's not legally there. We're seeing an exploitative relationship. Let's put it that way. That's what we're seeing when we saw that. So the reason I say that is because when we see the marchers, they're practicing their right to protest, and they're speaking with a loud voice within the confines of the law. But the rest of Africa is viewing that in the way, that perception, that optic is bad because of the rhetoric that is attached to it. And then you start uncovering people like this within those movements, and the ugliness comes further. And then you get to the point where people are dying, and there's mob violence, and then legitimate migrants are being ousted, and in some cases having violent attacks, and in some cases even killed. This is why the optics overrides whatever technical position that the people put themselves in when they're protesting. Community grievance. We have to be careful that we're not just using anecdotal grievances to handle a countrywide and a continent-wide problem. One of the videos I made is I spoke about how refugees are created in the continent of Africa, and how those things and how that migration starts even outside of the control of Africans. Because there are so many wars, there's so much meddling, creating disastrous outcomes, including Sudan, including Congo. We all know about these tragedies, genocides, interference in our politics, puppet leadership, influence, and destabilization. That's what causes a lot of these migrant movements, people seeking better opportunities. And some of those people will end up in South Africa. And a percentage of them will be bad people. The trade-off, remember I spoke about the trade-off. So when you start talking about community grievance, there was a hospital where 40% of the patients were foreigners. But does that represent the whole country? Because if it doesn't, we can't use that as a measuring stick to make a countrywide issue, right? It's an issue, it's a medical issue, and I understand it's bad when foreigners take up government resources, yes. But hospital beds, first of all, every hospital in the world deals their beds based on priority. You know, if there's a person on the verge of death, the person that, you know, sprained their ankle, maybe that guy doesn't get a bed. So there's a list of priority. And then there's also the idea that if I took a statistic from another hospital where maybe the whites live, and I said that there's not even one foreigner in that hospital, and then I use that statistic to say that there's no migrant problem across the country, that wouldn't be accepted either, because it's anecdotal. So we have to be very careful when they bring anecdotal points. One of the videos I broke down previously, Jacinta herself says, I don't have stats. Stats are not being collected.
There are no statistics because nobody's been doing research on the issue. So I don't understand these people that want statistics. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like,
we don't have numbers to back up what we say, but that's like the sword that cuts both ways. If we say that we don't like what you're doing, show us stats, and you say there are no stats, you can't sell us the idea that there is an unfair bias across the whole country, or there's some grievance across the whole country, because not only can you not prove it, we can't prove it either. I hope I made that was a bit of a choppy way I explained that. I hope you understand what I mean. These things cut both ways. The real driver, in my opinion, like I said earlier, is economic. The wealth disparity, which is all embedded in the process out of apartheid that South Africa has gone in. And people say, oh, well, if you address that, then you're not addressing the immediate concern. It is all connected. And like I said, when you start a war, which is essentially what they started a war against illegal migrants and migrants in general. When you start a war, you do not have control of the bounds of that war. It's escalated beyond the bounds of what you wanted it to be. It's gone countrywide, it's gone continent-wide, and it's at the level of the African Union now. I'm blaming the government, just like they do.
The target is government. I repeat that again.
But it's pointed at immigrants.
No, the target is government for allowing the issue of illegal immigrants to thrive in the country.
Just like John Mahama.
It doesn't appear that the South African authorities are responding to the magnitude that one would expect them to do.
There's a convergence of middle ground with every single side of this. If I bring Jacinta, she'll say the problem is the government. If we bring John Mahama, he said that the problem is the government, their lack of urgency on how they're dealing with this, or they didn't like the way they were dealing with it. And if you ask me also, I will say the government is here to blame. When things are not managed well, they break. Whether that's a car, whether that's a business, whether that's a country. When you do not manage your systems, they break. And that is what we're witnessing. And so I've said that the government is the arsonist. Now, if you want to say one thing that Jacinta has done that I can say is a victory, is that she and her group and Dudula and the others have put massive pressure on the government of South Africa to do something. So there is a chance that in a funny backwards way, what they're doing is going to work, because some type of outcome and change has to come out of this. If we get to the point where there's a better migration system, then you could say that that operation is a success, but at what cost? Interesting. The reason I'm torn up about this is because you have a movement that started around 2 years ago. One of my biggest videos on the channel is about Ibrahim Traore. When Traore burst onto the scene, he speaks a language of solidarity, Pan-Africanism, and anti-Neo-Colonialism. He speaks a language of sovereignty for the people of Africa. And this message has got momentum, it's got wheels, it's got traction. Yet all of this stuff undermines it. Africa's modern revolution, Ibrahim Traore and the Alliance of Sahel States, is a contest for finite attention. Right now, xenophobia is winning that contest. And this is a tragedy for us. The energy that could go into improving and bolstering and increasing this movement, which is basically the most revolutionary movement and the most popular movement on the continent right now. If you say, who would you vote for? I think many people would say Ibrahim Traore. Many people know of him and know of his ways. And so we are in a situation where we are taking energy away from that. John Mahama could be spending bandwidth, building and collaborating with Traore. Instead, he has to spend that energy with the African Union and talking about this publicly and dealing with his ministers and back and forth. That's energy we could be using for other things to build the continent of Africa, not solve problems that we didn't need to create for ourselves. And in my opinion, this is self-created, and the government of South Africa is the arsonist. And here we come to one of the most interesting South Africans that I've come across. She's called Katlego. I'm really sorry if I said that wrong. Her YouTube channel is Citizen Concerned. And she raises so many good points about South Africa. Whether you agree or disagree, she's South African. Whether you agree or disagree with her, she comes with facts, figures, data. She comes with cogent arguments. And it made me think, where is the intelligent arguments coming here? When your spokespeople are like this, where are the intellectuals that are promoting this idea? There are none, because the argument is an unintelligent one. The argument is a low resolution one. It only covers surface level. And as you start to dig a bit deeper, like my friend here says, when you start to dig a bit deeper, you see problems. And so one of the things that has been accused is, I don't understand South Africa because I'm not a South African, so I should shut up and I should go and fix my country. These are all the comments I've had. By the way, there's been death threats in my emails. I've documented, people have said those are fake. I've had all sorts of scenarios talking about this subject. And that's going to be actually pertinent to what she says. Let's just take a listen to what a South African has to say about this.
As South Africans, we should not lie to ourselves and we should not lie to each other. When we say foreigners are leaving, do we ask ourselves why they're leaving? And are we honest in answering this question? It seems like too many people are crediting the departure of foreigners to marching or protesting. But guys, protesting does not make people leave. It's simply protesting. For example, if you come and protest in front of my house demanding that I stop posting YouTube videos, I can 100% promise you that I will not stop.
Now, that's an interesting point, because I've not stopped posting content about South Africa, despite receiving many threats, particularly through my email, one of which I did a live stream and I showed people's murderous intent. They confessed to murdering people, and that didn't stop me. So there's something beyond the protests that causes people to actually leave, right? The real danger, and she's going to break it down now.
For example, if you come and protest in front of my house demanding that I stop posting YouTube videos, I can 100% promise you that I will not stop. As long as the government doesn't change, you'll march your Thursdays away and some foreigners will run away. You'll march month after month and more foreigners will run away. But what I want you to know is that they're not running away from this country because of the marches, but because of the hyenas among us. the brutes and the barbarians, those that are willing to maim human beings in the name of the marches. Those are the real reasons why people ran away from South Africa.
So South Africa is not xenophobic. I actually agree with that. I have the resolution and ability to look and say, there is a small minority of South Africans that are xenophobic. And she has named them, not me, hyenas, brutes, and barbarians among us. She's named them. And this is again where the double standard turns up. Because the xenophobia that she's talking about, the leverage comes from the hyenas, brutes, and barbarians. Does this minority group speak for the continent? Does this minority group, speak for South Africa? Right now they are. And they are effecting change through violence. And she's just explained the mechanism by which it is done. And I've said this before, you have the layer of the March on March. We march to government buildings. We're not against the foreigners directly. We're against the government. But underneath that, it gives license for the barbarians to turn up. And the barbarians that are the ones that leverage mob power, violent power, to exact fear into the hearts of the even legal migrants that are now leaving. And this is what we're pushing against. Whether you think we're addressing the concerns or not, this is what we don't like. She, as a South African, doesn't like it. Now, you want us, as March and March, Dudula, to say, to separate yourself from the hyenas and barbarians. Why can't you separate the bad foreigners from the good ones? You want that courtesy put upon you. Why can you not do that also for the foreigners? Why can you not go to this guy here? Why can you not go to the guy that she spoke about and say, hey, listen, you are contributing to this place. Why must he also leave? Why can you not have the intellectual integrity? That part makes us not want to hear anything you have to say. Your only leverage now is to continue as hyenas, brutes, and barbarians, or find another path if you want everybody to come on board with your movement. And if you want to think about this in a more deeper way, there's an iceberg here. The unseen cost. Now, if you're not able to differentiate between good foreigners and bad foreigners, foreigners that contribute and foreigners that don't, if you're just going to say I'm xenophobic and I hate, right, or have those people associated with you, then you're definitely not calculating the unseen cost, which is what that lady on the TikTok video was trying to explain. Here's a deeper level to that. So the visible costs are there, but what is invisible are the deals that never get attempted in the future, the businesses that will never be started in South Africa, the multinationals that will never come to invest in your country. That is the mass below the water. That is this part of the iceberg. You can only see this top part. Get out, the spaza shops, the drugs, the whatever. This part is unseen. And I remember someone talking about an airplane technology after 9/11. So after 9/11, they created a door between the cabin and the cockpit because the 9/11 attackers were able to get into the cockpit and hold the pilots to ransom, right? If you remember the story. So they made a new type of door that means that that door cannot be opened while the plane is in flight. So that even if there are people holding the plane as ransom, they can't get to the cockpit. And what that means is there is an unseen, an uncalculatable number of future 9/11s or future planejackings that have been eviscerated, that will never exist. We can't count that number. What is unseen are the future crimes in that regard. And we've not seen planejackings in any of the planes that have those doors since. So we can see only one side of the stats, what is visible. There might be a time where someone says, hey, why are we putting these expensive doors in these planes? That would be to ignore history. That would be to ignore what has taken place in the past and not count the unseen. And I'm wondering if South Africans that follow this anti-immigration movement are not counting the unseen. there's another massive unseen element here that it by itself outclasses any other of the grievances I've mentioned so far. Who is watching and why are they glad? This is where we get really to the crux of the title. Because people are watching what's going on here. The imperial neo-colonial players watch this situation with glee. Dysfunction is their opening, and they know where our passions lie as Africans. They know what drives us. They know what can rile us up. It used to be religion, maybe it still is. It used to be tribalism, maybe it still is. Well, this is a new form of tribalism that we're now creating. Tribalism created, isn't it mad that they even created, they created the tribe because they're the ones that drew the border to say one is South African, one is Botswana, and one is Lesotho. They created that division by drawing the lines all over Africans, all over the continent of Africa, without Africa being present. And now it continues to pay dividend, compounding multi-generations after they drew those lines. Look at the bondage we're in. The rhetoric overwhelming in their minds right now is that Africa cannot govern itself. These are failed states. Remember when Donald Trump called Africa shithole countries? How many people think that now? Look at this idiot saying she's xenophobic. She's self-hating. That's what they're thinking. They can't be governed. Hey, we might as well come in there and take what they don't know how to protect. It's no longer just locked. It's no longer just locked to religion and tribalism. We've now got a new vector. That is the new opportunity for colonialism. If we reignite our feuds into country, who ends up owning everything? Listen to this statistic. Africa owns about 1.2% of world shipping tonnage and has no global carrier. So that means all of the rich resources that the whole world needs from the continent of Africa, continent-wide, we own 1.2% of the shipping infrastructure. We don't own big cargo ship companies. The rest of the world does. So everything, we can't capitalize on our materials because mostly, on the most part, raw materials get sent elsewhere. They get shipped out, keyword ship. They then get value added and sold back to us. I've spoken about this many times. But even the process of shipping it out and bringing it back, that part of the chain is owned by someone else. So we can't even capitalize on the movement of our resources, let alone the full assembly line and value add line. And this is just, I put this here as an example to say that this is how they own us. This is how we are owned by foreign countries. They dictate the shipping. They own us. And this is just information about who owns this infrastructure when it pertains to South Africa. You can come and read that yourself. So why is this the neo-colonial opportunity? I'm going to use this reference of this video and we'll break it down after.
John Kiriaka was having a full-blown, I know John, like he was having an existential moment in front of me when he read that email.
Yeah.
He literally was like, I've never seen the guy speechless in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, guy's got stories for days.
Yeah.
He was speechless.
So John Kiriakos is a former CIA officer and he has seen it all. He's seen the deep state stuff, the stuff behind the scenes. He's been critical of everything that's come out of the Epstein files, and he's about to be given new information that he's never seen before. And this guy here is explaining that he's never seen him speechless before. This is an Epstein email from the Epstein files.
Yeah.
He was speechless. Brexit, he sends to Peter Thiel, Brexit, just the beginning. Peter Thiel responds of what? And Epstein goes, return to tribalism, counter to globalization, amazing new alliances. You and I both agreed zero interest rates were too high. And as I said in your office, finding things on their way to collapse was much easier than finding the next bargain.
Now, why is he speechless? Why is he speechless?
I never seen you so speechless.
Now, the reason he's speechless is because this is an email between Epstein and Peter Thiel, tech billionaire. And what they're saying is, we make more money when economies are going down, when there are problems. We make more money on the way down rather than rather than finding bargains. Listen to this. Let's hear the wording again.
Turn to tribalism,
Return to tribalism,
counter to globalization,
counter to globalization,
amazing new alliances.
amazing new alliances.
You and I both agreed zero interest rates were too high. And as I said in your office, finding things on their way to collapse was much easier than finding
things on their way to collapse. Is South Africa or South Africa not on its way to collapse if it continues down this path? One might say it's been on its way to collapse for a while. Now, it's up to South Africa to turn that ship around. But what he's saying is that we buy in collapse. There's the famous Rothschild saying, is that when there's blood in the streets, that's when we buy. It's best to buy when there's blood in the streets. Basically, prices are rock bottom. Leverage is at its lowest. And if you have a bit of patience and a bit of strategy, which I don't think these people have, I don't think these three people have the best strategy compared with those that are looking to own us on the way down through the collapse. It's much easier for them. They are rubbing their hands with glee as we fight amongst each other. Even if we look at what John Mahama has said, that adds to the destruction. We can lay blame wherever we want. But if we're not careful, this neo-colonial game that we're trying to pull ourselves out of, that Ibrahim Traore tried to start the spark of, is going down the drain. If we don't see the bigger picture, guys, we will stay the most impoverished continent. There will be more townships. There will be more refugees. There will be more things for us to fight over at the scraps at the bottom, while we are a wholesale owned by everybody else. Now, if you want to hear solutions, because this whole thing has brought problems, I'm bringing problems. I've got a video where I break down solutions. I'm putting it on the screen right now, and I think you should watch it.